Hello everyone, this is Maureen and welcome to my crochet story. Today is part 2 of the summer swimsuit cover-up that I have designed for you. But before we get started on that, let me say thank you so much for all of you being here. I hope you're as excited as I am to take the little bit of design work that we did and looking at how we're going to build this swimsuit cover-up that I showed you in part 1. Now if you missed that, I'll leave a link to that video down in the description box. But if you're not so interested in the design part, that's okay, because all you need is some cotton thread of your choice and a J-hook, and we can get started building this cute little summer cover-up. I'm sorry, I had a brain bubble there for a moment. Now, part 2 is only going to cover this little rectangular piece right here because it is a little bit more involved in the bottom part here. So this part 2 is only going to cover this. Part 3 I will release within the next week. So, before we get started on that, let me say thank you for all of you being here. You know that I greatly appreciate your time. If you're new to my channel, this is your first time here, welcome, and may I ask that you take just a moment to go look at all the other content that I have uploaded, and if you like what you see, please hit that subscribe button down there and look for the bell that has the little hugs on the side, and it will notify you every time I upload content. So let's talk about part 2 here. So what you're going to see is we're going to be making, there she is, hope you can see all of that, I can't see through the camera there, but this is what we're going to be building today. Now I use peaches and cream cotton for this. It's just a very simple design of using double crochets and the little window stitch of double crochets, chain one, skip one, another double crochet, and that's simply all that it is. Now the nice thing about this little pattern, and I will talk about it more at the end of the project, is that there are so many different things that you can do with just the rectangular part of the pattern. You can make it all double crochets. You can make it all just the window stitch, just take one, choose one or the other and just repeat it, make it more open, make it more solid. You can take the rectangular piece and make it even longer if you want more coverage, like down towards the midriff. So there's a lot of things that you can do to this simple little pattern. It just all depends on what you want. So here in just a few minutes, right after the little intermission sign, we will get started making this cute little cover-up. I hope that you enjoy making it. I know that I really enjoyed making it for my granddaughter, excuse me, and I just thought, this was such an easy little project that why not share it out with someone else that might like to make one for their child or grandchild as well. Now, this is based on an adult small, but if you looked at my design in part 1, you see that I give you a few tricks on how to alter it for really any size child, or adult as well. So let's gather our materials, and I'll see you right after the intermission here in just a moment. Hello everyone, this is Maureen and welcome to my crochet story. Today is part 2 of the summer swimsuit cover-up that I have designed for you. But before we get started on that, let me say thank you so much for all of you being here. I hope you're as excited as I am to take the little bit of design work that we did and looking at how we're going to build this swimsuit cover-up that I showed you in part 1. Now if you missed that, I'll leave a link to that video down in the description box. But if you're not so interested in the design part, that's okay, because all you need is some cotton thread of your choice and a J-hook, and we can get started building this cute little summer cover-up. I'm sorry, I had a brain bubble there for a moment. Now, part 2 is only going to cover this little rectangular piece right here because it is a little bit more involved in the bottom part here. So this part 2 is only going to cover this. Part 3 I will release within the next week. So before we get started on that, let me say thank you for all of you being here. You know that I greatly appreciate your time. If you're new to my channel, this is your first time here, welcome. And may I ask that you take just a moment to go look at all the other content that I have uploaded. And if you like what you see, please hit that subscribe button down there and look for the bell that has the little hugs on the side, and it will notify you every time I upload content. So let's talk about part 2 here. So what you're going to see is we're going to be making, there she is. Hope you can see all of that. I can't see through the camera there. But this is what we're going to be building today. Now, I use peaches and cream cotton for this. It's just a very simple design of using double crochets and the little window stitch of double crochets, chain 1, skip 1, another double crochet, and that's simply all that it is. Now, the nice thing about this little pattern, and I will talk about it more at the end of the project, is that there are so many different things that you can do with just the rectangular part of the pattern. You can make it all double crochets. You can make it all just the window stitch. Just, you know, take one, choose one or the other and just repeat it. Make it more open, make it more solid. You can take the rectangular piece and make it even longer if you want more coverage, like down towards the midriff. So there's a lot of things that you can do to this simple little pattern. It just all depends on what you want. So here in just a few minutes, right after the little intermission sign, we will get started making this cute little cover-up. I hope that you enjoy making it. I know that I really enjoyed making it for my granddaughter, excuse me, and I just thought, you know, this was such an easy little project that why not share it out with someone else that might like to make one for their child or grandchild as well. Now, this is based on an adult small, but if you looked at my design in part 1, you see that I give you a few tricks on how to alter it for really any size child, so or adult as well. So let's gather our materials, and I'll see you right after the intermission here in just a moment. Alright, so I now have my the first cotton piece spool that I showed you that has little, you know, specks of different colors through it. I've had it attached to my yarn. I just used a slip knot. You can attach it any way that's comfortable for you. I will be using my Susan Bates J hook. It's a little hard for me to get it to, there it is, for this project today. And now to determine the number of chains I'm going to have to make. Well, I said for me 3 double crochets equal 1 inch, and I want this to be 28 inches across. So that means 28 times 3 is going to be 84 chains. But it also says the multiple is 3 plus 2, so that we have, you know, a chaining direction. So I'm going to be crocheting 84 plus 2, which will make it 86. Now it's going to be a little bit of a length of chain, but that's okay. So as we get started, now I'm not going to sit here and chat with you the whole time I'm chaining 86 chains, but I do want to remind you that when you are making your chains, don't be a speed demon. Take enough time to make sure that you are making nice, consistent, even chains. And you're going to want to make this chain just a little bit loose. Don't do it tight where you hear it squeak, the thread squeaking through your hook squeaking through the thread. That means it's going to be way too tight. And if you can't do that, if you can't do a loose chain and keep your stitches consistent, go up a hook size, go up to the K, and then once you have your chains made, you can always come back, and then start your project with the J hook, or whichever hook gives you the swatch gauge that you need. So I'm going to stop just a moment, and I'm going to get mine going. Make sure once you get through chaining that you take just a moment to go back and count the number of chains you're going to need. I'm going to need 86. So I'll see you back in just a moment. Alright, I have completed my chain, and I did go back and count just like I told you to do as well. So we're ready now to start the first row of our little swimsuit cover-up here, or the top portion of it anyway. Alright, so what we're going to do is we're going to skip the first chain, and into this second chain here we are going to put a single crochet, and then that's all this first row is just putting in single crochets into each chain. However, when I do this, set up this first row with the single crochets. Now you can do this either way that you want. Rather than going into the top chain, or the top loop, of the chain, remember when we make a chain, there's a top loop, a bottom loop, and then if you turn your chain over and look at it on the side, there's this third little loop here. A lot of folks call it a bump, and that's alright. I'm going to be working into this third loop here on my chain so that it gives me a nice, what looks like the top of a stitch edging here. Now, if you don't particularly care for that, or you're not interested in using that technique, you can always just go into the top loop of each one of your chains and put in your single crochet. Either way is fine. I just prefer the other way because it gives a nice clean edge, whether I'm going to go back and work into it, or if I'm going to leave it as just the edge of my project, or if I want to go back and add some fringe. Alrighty, so we're going to skip the first chain. Remember, this is just your working loop. This doesn't count as anything. That is not a chain. So we're going to skip the first chain, and into the next one we are going to put our first single crochet. And I let that loop there get too big on me. Get her back where she belongs. There we go. Go right in there into that third loop and make my first single crochet. Go into the next one, make the next single crochet. Now, you're going to find that these loops here look like they're awful big, but that's alright, because by the time we get 2 or 3 rows into this project, your beginning chain there is going to settle down and work its way nicely into what you're doing. Let me get some more thread here. And since we are only doing single crochets, I am not going to sit here with you and chit-chat, like I did with the chain. We'll be here for a bit, and I don't want there to be a lot of dead space, so I'm just going to tell you that you need to just put single crochets into each stitch all the way down. And again, I'm going to caution you to take your time. I know I've mentioned this before, but it's always the beginning and the end of any project or even of any paper, I used to tell my students that you have to write. It's what you say first and what you end with at the last that people remember the most. And it's the same way whenever we're creating something, especially like with a garment, whether you're sewing it or you're crocheting or knitting. People tend to look at the bottom of the project or the ends of it or the outside edges. So you always want to make sure that you take especially extra care, that's what I'm trying to say, in setting up your foundation so that the rest of your piece falls in there very nicely. Alright, so continue on, and let's say wait on me when you get to the last 2 stitches of your row. I'll be right back. Alright, I'm down to the end of my chain and I have 2 stitches left, so I'm going to go into this excuse me, 3rd loop to make my last single crochet, or really not my last one. But here we are back to this starting chain, or the starting chain. So I just normally turn mine over and go into regular loop like we normally would and just make my single crochet. So if you go back and you count the number of single crochets that you have, now not this little chain 1 that we skipped, alright, that's just to give us our lift, but start with the first single crochet and you count all the way down, you should have 85 chains, and 85 stitches, 85 single crochets, and that's going to be your count at the end of each row from here moving forward until we get finished with the top portion of the little cover up. Alright, so now what we're going to do is we're going to chain 1 and turn our work. Now the next 2 rows are going to be simply double crochets into each stitch. Now a lot of folks like to tell you to chain 2, skip the first one and let that chain 2 count as your first double crochet. Some say chain 3. I don't like doing that because it creates a hole in here. And I'm going to, at the end, once I get my little cover up all taken care of, I'm going to go back and I'm going to put like a little scallop edge around my sleeves. And so I want something a little more substantial here on the edge of the sleeve in which to crochet those little shells into. So what I do is I just chain 1 and I go ahead and put my first double crochet right there in that first stitch. Now for many of you, this finished loop right here might end up being a little bit big, but that's okay because it's going to settle down once you come back from the other direction and work into it. But it'll be alright. And you might even see where it looks like it's going to curve in a little, but everything will, as they say, come out in the wash when we get going. And then like I said, we're just going to put 1 double crochet in each stitch all the way across. Remember to go under both loops of the stitch from the previous row. So here's our front loop and our back loop. I want to go underneath both of those when I'm doing my double crochets. And that's all we're going to do, folks, for the next 2 rows. So I'm going to let you get at it, and I'll meet you at the end of the row so I can remind you again how to do the chain 1 and do the double crochet in here. I mean, I know many of you don't know that, but for some of you newbies, you know, especially doing my technique, you might need a little refresher. But I'll meet you at the end of the row here in just a second. Alright, I'm coming down to the end of my row here. And remember, this little loop here on the end is not a stitch, it's just your turning chain. So there is my last single crochet of the row. Now if you want to, be sure and go back and do your stitch count and make sure that you have 84 double crochet. So I'm going to do that real quick. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20, 22, 24, 26, 28, 30, 32, 34, 36, 38, 40, 42, 44, 46, 48, 50, 52, 54, 56, 58, 60, 62, 64, 66, 68, 70, 72, 74, 76, 78, 80, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I think I said 84. We need 85 stitches. So, rocking right along. Chain 1, turn of work, and you're going to make one more row of one more row of double crochet. So remember, I just chain 1, and then I just go right ahead and go back into that very first stitch and make my double crochet. Alright, and then I just continue on down the row. So I will meet you at the very end of this row, and we'll talk about what we're going to do on the next row, because it's just a little bit different. But then that'll give us what we need for our repeat pattern until we get ready to make the row that has our neckline in it. Alright, so I'll be back with you in just a few minutes when I get to the end of the row. Right, I'm coming down to the end of the row here. I have 1, 2, 3 stitches to go. So I'm just going to finish that out. And here we go. Remember, this is our first double crochet that we did without chaining or anything. And see how whenever you come back and work into it, you can hardly tell that it's any different from the rest of them. Alright, so again, we are going to chain 1, turn our work, get this kind of straightened out here a little bit. Oh, yep, don't do that, come on. Let's make sure you guys are not gonna knot up on me. There we go. Alright, so again, chain 1, turn your work. Alright, so for this row, we're going to start out with 2 double crochets, 1 in each of the first 2 stitches. So I'm going to put 1 double crochet into the first stitch, and 1 double crochet into the next stitch. And then for the rest of the row, we're going to chain 1, skip 1, and put a double crochet into the next. Chain 1, skip 1, and double crochet into the next. We're going to be making like a little window pattern. So we're going to chain 1 after this second double crochet, skip this stitch, and into the next stitch is where we're going to put our next double crochet. Chain 1, skip a stitch, and into the next stitch do a double crochet. Chain 1. Now folks, be careful with your chain 1s here, because you are going to be using them in the next row, so don't make them itty bitty, don't let them tighten up on you. So I've made my chain 1, skip 1, and double crochet into the next. And that is your repeat pattern for the rest of the row. We're going to chain 1, skip 1, double crochet, chain 1, skip 1, double crochet, until you get down to about the last 4 stitches, and then I'll show you how we're going to finish out the row. Alright, so we're going to chain 1, skip 1, put in a double crochet into the next one. And you'll see it kind of makes this cute little window pattern here. Alright, so I'll see you back towards the end of the row in just a minute. Alright, I'm coming down to the last few stitches of my row, and I hope you see this cute, pretty little, you'd be surprised sometimes whenever you're crocheting or developing anything that what a chain 1 space or a chain 2 space will do in your pattern. And I think that this just gives it enough of a little open texture there, if you wish, to not only let a little air through, you know, it's cotton, it's going to help them to absorb the moisture off their swimsuits and stuff, and keeps them cool at the same time, and has a nice little, it's not a standout decoration, but it's still, I like it. Anyway, so I've made my double crochet. I'm going to chain one, skip a space, go into the next double crochet, chain one, do a double crochet. Oh, excuse me. Did I do my chain one, skip one, and then I'm going to put one double crochet in each of these last two stitches. Because if you remember, at the beginning of the row, we started with 2 double crochets. Get that over there just a minute. So at the beginning of the row, we started with 2 double crochets and then chain 1 double crochet, did that all the way down, and we ended up with a chain 1 and 2 double crochets. Alright, so now we go to the next row. Now this next row is just going to be a repeat of row 3, and this becomes your repeat pattern. It's a 2-row repeat. We're going to do double crochets and our little window pattern here that has the chain 1 double crochet, and then a full row of double crochets, and then we'll come back and do this row. Full row of double crochets all the way until we get to where we want to build the neckline row. So there's 2 ways that you can fill in this chain 1 space here. Let's go ahead and get started. I've done my chain 1. I'm going to turn my work, and I'm going to go ahead and put my first double crochet into these 2 at the very beginning. So there's my first double crochet, and here's my second double crochet. Now this next double crochet is just your own personal preference. You can double crochet right into the chain 1 space. And I made that loop too big there. I let it get away from me. Let me tighten it up. And then I'm going to go ahead and double crochet into the top of this other one here so you can see. Alright, so there you go. So I've done 2 double crochets. I did a double crochet in the chain 1 space and then a double crochet. Now many times you will see in written patterns that to just double crochet or put your stitch in the chain 1 space. Or you can, when you get to your chain 1 space, just go right into the chain itself, the little chain stitch here that you made. And this is why I tell you to be careful making that chain a little tight, like I did right there. Come on. Oh, there we go, there we go, there we go. I think. Come on. There it goes. And make your double crochet. Alright, either way is alright. That is the version that I prefer, but like I said, you can do whichever one you want. We'll move on to the next double crochet and put a double crochet on top. Here's my chain 1 space. I'm going to go into the chain itself, and again Maureen did what she told you not to do, and that's to let that little chain there get so tight. And sometimes that happens when you get ready to make the next double crochet. Like I said, this is what Maureen likes to do, but if you're struggling to get it into the top of the chain itself, then just go ahead and go into the chain 1 space. Either way is going to be fine. Let's see, that one was not as difficult because Maureen paid attention to what she was doing. now back into another chain one space here. And you notice I'm going into both loops there of my chain. It may take you a little time or more time than what you want to do. So like I said, if you wish to do just into the chain one space, that's all right. Alright, and that's all you're going to do for this particular row. You're going to put a double crochet into the chain one space and a double crochet into the top of the double crochet, into the chain one, double crochet, chain one, double crochet, all the way down to the end of the row. And I will meet you there in just a moment. Now like I said, you can either just double crochet right over that chain, or you can take a little time and put your double crochet in the chain itself, but be sure that you go through both of the little loops of your chain. Alright, see you in just a minute. Alright, I'm coming down to the end of the row, doing double crochet in the top of a double crochet, and doing my last double crochet. See how I let that little chain one there get away from me? My goodness gracious. Alright, here we go. Come on. There's the first loop. Where is the other one? There it is. I kept thinking, folks, as I was coming through here and struggling with my chain one stitches, I was thinking, well, I sure hope they did what I said and not what I did, because... But it's alright. We'll fix it in the next one, if that's the technique you choose to do. Now, if you didn't choose that technique, that's fine, as long as you got double crochets in the top of each one of your double crochets and in the chain one space there. I just prefer to put it in the chain one rather than in the space itself, because I just think it makes the little window stand out a little bit more. But guys, either way, it's totally up to you. Alright, so here is our repeat pattern. We're going to do a double crochet row and a window row, where it's the chain double crochet, chain one, double crochet row, then the little window row again, and then double crochet, window row again, double crochet. Alright, so I'm going to get you started on this next row here, which is our window row. And remember, we're going to chain one, turn our work, and on the window row we start with one double crochet in the top of the first two stitches. There's my first one, and here's my second one. Then I'm going to chain one, and I'm going to make sure that chain stays where it's supposed to be and doesn't get tightened up. Skip a double crochet, and then in the next one I'm going to make a double crochet. Alright, and see, I want a nice a nice chain there, not that old tight thing like I did. Let me go back and redo that double crochet, because I let that loop there get away from me, concentrating too much on my chain. Alright, there was my second double crochet. There's my chain. Skip, make my double crochet, chain one, skip one, double crochet. Not keeping up with my tension, mercy me. Alright, and so there we go. Chain one, skip, double crochet. Alright, and then once you get finished with this row, repeat row 3, which is our double crochet row, and then repeat row 4, which is your window row. Now I'm going to do this until I have a total of 20 rows. Now I'm not going to count my single crochet row here, because I consider that my foundation row. So starting with this first row of double crochets, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and I'll meet you after I have 20 rows. So that means after 15 more rows of alternating between double crochets and the window row, I'll see you then. Alright? Alright, so I stopped for just a moment to see where I was at as far as the length of my swatch here, or my top, and I wanted it to be 10 inches, and it is exactly 10 inches. So by the time I got to this last double crochet row, I was on row 16. So long as I have my 10 inches, which is what I wanted for my top part here before I start the turn over the top, at the shoulder, that's what I wanted. So it only took me 16 rows. So once you come to the end, we're going to chain one. Oh, first let me bring my camera back down, because I needed to bring it up so that you could see, get the full picture there. Alright, so for this next row, what we're going to do is we've ended with a row of double crochets, and we're going to do another row of double crochets. So row 17 for this particular one is going to be right at another row of double crochet. So I'm going to go in there. I've already chained one, turned my work, and as I said, we're going to put one more row of double crochets in here. Now, like I said in the very beginning, if you want this front piece here to be longer, then I would start with adding one more row of the little window row where we have the double crochet, chain one, double crochet, and then follow it by a row of double crochets, and to see if that gives you more of the length on top of the chest that you want. But for the size adult small that I am making here, the 16 rows turned out fine. So starting here on row 17, I am just going to put in another row of double crochets, and I will meet you back at the end of the row in just a minute, and I'll tell you how we're going to start the row that creates our neckline for us. So meet you in just a moment. Alright, so I have just now completed row 17, and what I'm going to do now is chain one and turn my work. Now what you'll notice is you already have now 2 rows of double crochet. So this next row, we're going to start out, get my thread positioned correctly. I'm going to chain one, and we're going to put a double crochet back into this very first stitch here, and then we're going to count off 25 double crochets, not including this one. So we'll end up with a total of 26 double crochets. Alright, so in order to make the neck opening, now what we're going to do is we're going to, at this point here, we are going to chain 26, and you want those chains to be loose. 26, excuse me, we just did 26 double crochets. We want to chain 32, and we want that to be loose. And then what we're going to do is we're going to skip 36 of these double crochets. So what I'm going to do real quick is I'm going to find my stitch marker here that I had out just a moment ago. Alright, I found my stitch marker. And so what I'm going to do is real quick pull up my thread here, and I'm going to count off 32 stitches to skip, because remember we're going to chain 32 to create the neck opening, and then we're going to want to skip the same number of double crochets here. So not counting the stitch that we just worked into, we're going to start right here at the next one. 1, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20, 22, 24, 26, 28, 30, 32, and then this very next stitch is where we're going to put our first double crochet right after we have chained 32. So I'll come back over here, get ready to put my hook back on there. Alright, so remember now I said we want to chain loosely so that when we come back from this other direction making our next row of double crochets, we want to make sure we have a nice pretty chain in which to work into and it not be all tight and us having to fight with it. So there's chain 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And I'm going to let you finish out the rest of them, okay? Alright, I have chained my 32 and I'm ready to finish out this row with double crochets. So I'm going to make sure that my chain does not get twisted on me here. Just follow it down. No, it did not get twisted. Alright, so I'm going to come right in here and we're going to put where we've got our stitch marker, we're going to yarn over. I'm going to hold both of these loops here for just a second or two. Say I'm going to do that. Control my tension there. Yarn over and I'm going to go right in here where I have a stitch marker and I'm going to put a double crochet. This one might get a little loose on you, but that's okay. Alright, and then we're just going to finish out the row with double crochets. And you should end up with 26 on this other end. And I will be back and meet you at the end of the row. Alright, I've just finished my 26 double crochets and now we're getting ready to put double crochets into each one of these chains. So we're going to yarn over and you'll see that the way that your chain has turned on you just a little bit, you'll be able to see all three loops, your top loop, your bottom loop, and then this middle loop or third loop, bumpy loop if you want. So when we get ready to put our double crochets into these chains from the way they're facing, I want you to go underneath that middle or second loop of the chain that's exposed to you there and make your double crochet. Go to the next one, see how we have the top loop, the middle loop, and the bottom loop. Go in between the second and third loop. It'll give us a nice edge so that if we wish to come back and put some kind of secondary edging on and around the neckline there, we can do so, or we can just leave it alone. But we'll discuss that more as we get towards the end of our project here. So continue making double crochets in each chain across, and I'll meet you when we get here to this double crochet. Alright, I'm coming down to the last chain here. Put my double crochet in there. Alright, and now I'm ready to finish out my row. I'm getting ready to do the very first double crochet here. And see, the transition was very nice from making double crochets to filling in the chain, and then from finishing out the chain to doing double crochets. And as you can see there, now we have a nice opening to go over our head and then lay right around our neck. So go ahead and finish out this row and we'll talk about how we're going to finish out this top piece here that makes the bodice type portion of the little cover up. So I'll meet you at the end of the row. I'm at the end of my row. I'm ready to chain one and turn. And now we're going to put in again one more row of double crochets before we start back with our repeat pattern of alternating between a row of double crochets and a row of the little window pattern. Okay, so start with your double crochets all the way across for one more row, and I will meet you at the end of the row and we'll get started on finishing the back. So see you in just a minute. Alright, I'm coming down to the last couple of double crochets for this row. And what I want you to see is that in respect to the neckline here, we had two double crochet rows, full double crochet rows, then we had the neckline, and now we have two full double crochet rows. So starting with the next row, we're going to start with our window row, or the double crochet, chain one, skip one, double crochet. So that when you take your little top and fold it right there at the blanket piece, at the neckline piece, excuse me, you'll see that when your front and back sit on top of each other, you're going to be able to see where the double crochet rows are and the window rows, the double crochets and the window rows. So we just completed our double crochet row, so we're going to chain one and start right back into our alternating patterns, or two row repeat, if you will, of double crochet rows and window rows. Now this one, starting on the back, is going to be our window row, so you know that we go right back into that first stitch with a double crochet into the next stitch when you don't lose a loop, chain one, skip one, and then double crochet into the next. And you know how the pattern goes now: double crochet, chain one, skip one, double crochet, chain one, skip one, double crochet. And you're going to do that all the way down for the rest of the row. And this row should be, let me get my thread here untangled, this row here should be row number, row number 20, but let's count. So this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 19, 20, 21. This is row 22, excuse me. So starting with row 22, we are going to be alternating with the window row and the double crochet row all the way out to row 33, or once again, so that you have 10 inches from your neckline row to the end. But as I said, if you take and you fold this right there where that neckline is, see that we already have our two double crochet rows on this side, and there are two double crochet rows on the corresponding side. Now we're getting ready to make our, there it is, window row, which will be right there. So that means that we need to complete, this is our window row, we need to complete 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, and 15 rows because we want the front and the back to match up with each other. But I'm going to say when we get down to this 14th row, if you will, stop and we'll join each other and we'll finish out this little top piece of our swimsuit cover-up. See you back in just a little bit. Alright, so I have completed, I know I told you I was going to meet you back here at the end of this first section of double crochet rows, but before I knew it, I was just completely finished with all of the back side. So you should end up with 2 rows of double crochets at the end, and don't forget we started with a row of single crochets, so we'll need to add a row of single crochets. So if you take your piece then right up here at the neckline and fold it over, where's my neckline? There it is. You will see that your little window sections here will match up, and you'll end with 2 rows of double crochets and then this row of single crochets, so that, like I said, when we look at what we have here, we're matching up the front and the back. Alright, I apologize for going ahead, but I was just bebopping along there like I knew what I was doing. But you should understand that you want the same number of rows on the front on the back as you do on the front, and after coming off the shoulder here with our additional row of double crochets after the row with the where the neckline is, we start again with alternating rows of window, double crochets, window, double crochets, all the way down, and then you will end with 2 rows of double crochets and 1 row of single crochets. So that gets us through, oops, picked up another piece of yarn there. That gets us through part 2 of this little swimsuit cover-up. In part 3, which will be released in the next week, we will be attaching, we'll be marking off our sleeves here from both sides, be marking off our sleeves, and then we will start then from there to the middle, or to the other side, excuse me, with our trapezoidal little skirt bottom, and then we will wrap it up. So, until next time, be the light out there in the darkness for someone today, because you never know. Could be your light they need to see. See you next week for part 3. Bye.